Hello, my name is Kai, and I am a bit of a rambler. I like to travel, learn, and tell stories, and today we're gonna ramble on. Well, I'm gonna ramble on, and I invite you into my world to listen. I don't have to invite you, you can just click on it. In fact, you have hammock. I was talking about hammocks last time because I was very excited to get back into hammock camping. I got my hammock from the interesting camping store owner. Oh, and after testing it out and realizing that I like hammock straps more than ropes and that the hammock is heavy enough to carry me in my rucksack, so I'm all set hammock wise. I just need to get a mosquito net, rain gear, and then I have to make it travel-y. Right, the last episode I mentioned that I came up with a pretty good idea. Because this thing has an attached stuff sack, which is like a cylinder that you can smush the hammock into, and then it's very contained. Because any light fabric will sort of expand and fluff out, but that's what stuff sacks are for. Your jacket, your puffer jacket, or a hammock, or anything, your clothes, you can smush them down as small as possible into a stuff sack and then close them up, and they'll fit better into your suitcase. The thing is, airlines are just reducing and reducing and reducing the amount of weight you're allowed to take on an aircraft. To the point that these days, 2026, there are very few airlines in the US at least, or flying to the US, that allow you to take a carry-on bag of any size on. You are still allowed a personal item. So that's enough for me. A personal item it's very tiny. It's like 20 by 40 centimeters rectangle, 10 centimeters wide. It's a small thing, but because of my packet jacket, it works. I can fit my audio equipment, my laptop, and all of my clothes into just my packet jacket, my jacket with a bunch of pockets that I have made. And patented, hey! Which brings me to the second patent. I loved this hammock, but I haven't had a hammock set up for so long, partly because I was doing audio work, but partly because I would have to fit my whole hammock camping setup into my bag. And when I first had it, it didn't take up a lot of room, my hammock camping setup, but I also wasn't carrying around all of this all of this audio equipment. So now that I had the audio equipment, I just figured I couldn't fit a whole sleeping setup into my bag, because I need a hammock, I need a bug net, I need a rain tarp, and the ropes for the hammock, or the straps in this case. So I need a few things, and that does sound like it will take up a lot of space. The rain tarp especially took up the most space and was the least flexible of those items. But the thing is, I came up with a great idea. Let's get to it. So this great idea could also incorporate my bug net, and I wouldn't have to add any weight or volume, very importantly, to my rucksack when I traveled. So I could still have an empty rucksack that I could take on as a personal item, but I would be able to carry at least a basic sleeping setup of hammock and bug net with me. How, you may ask? Well, I have to get the bug net first, which again turned out to be much more of an ordeal, and then not an ordeal at all, and I'm set for life with those. I just had to broaden my mind and think in a different way, which is always the solution to these things. Every time I need to make something new or fix a problem, I just have to look at it in a different way, and then there's usually a very easy way to solve my problem. With the hammock, obviously, that wasn't the case. I just had to brute force go to every camping store and find the one in Ulaanbaatar that was good. But with most problems, I just have to step outside of my own perspective. So I went back to that black market, and as I mentioned last episode, I was like, they've got to have mosquito nets. Turns out I was wrong. They don't have mosquitoes in Mongolia. So I did ask a few of the camping. I was like, do you not have mosquito nets because there's no bugs? They were like, yeah, pretty much. We just don't have bugs. So we don't really need bug nets. And that makes sense, so you can't fault them for it. And I really was just like, well, when I get to Jeju, South Korea, that's an island, like a somewhat tropical island, maybe subtropical we'll call it, and I'll be able to find a mosquito net there because they will have mosquitoes like everywhere else in Asia and the entire world except for Mongolia. And I was like, whatever, that's fine. But when I have, when I decide to do something like find a bug net in Mongolia, my brain will always keep working on whatever it is in the background. Or if someone asks me a question and I don't have the answer right away, I'm just like, okay, brain, and brain will just work on it. And then when it has an answer, it'll ping me, basically. It'll be like, hey, I got that, and then I'll have that answer. It might be days later or whatever, but I know brain works on things. If there's not a definite it's impossible or I decide it's impossible to do, can I jump and touch the moon? I can't, so my brain's not going to work on that. But if it's feasible, then my brain will work on it, especially if it knows there's something that I'm probably just not considering. I just kind of have it on a back burner bubbling. And at this point, I'm just like, okay, brain, take that one. So with the mosquito net, I was like, it's fine. I can wait a week. I'm going to get to Jeju, and then I know they're everywhere, so I'll be able to find one easily. But brain, you can work on it if you think of something. And then the next day, brain pinged me, and it was like, fabric store. And I was like, oh, yeah. I went to, oh man, like 30 different fabric stores, and they kept telling me, this place has mosquito nets. This place has mosquito nets. 2 of them had mosquito nets, and they were drapes over the front of a kid's toy castle. That was like a thing, so like kid could like play inside this tiny inflatable castle, and then there was like a mosquito net drapery in front of it. But it was by no means enough mosquito netting to cover my hammock. So what I do usually is get a $1 mosquito net made for a bed, and then I cut that into a large rectangle, sew the rectangle lengthwise together, and then add drawstrings on both sides. So it's basically just a casing, a bug net casing I can slide right over the hammock. And I thought I permanently attached this the first time I made it, but apparently I didn't, because I had a separate stuff sack for my bug net, which was inefficient, but it worked so well already, it still only took a couple of minutes to break down, that I never thought of integrating the two, which is funny. Until now, I have done that. Okay, so yeah, I can't get the bug net I'm used to, a canopy bed bug net. So, brain was like, fabric stores, you just visited a bunch. What if one of those fabric stores has mesh netting, like a bridal veil mesh netting, for instance, that you could use as bug net? You could just get a couple bridal veils or a few of those and sew them together and make your tube of bug net for your hammock. And I was like, brain, that is a good idea. So I looked around. There was a fabric store maybe a 10-minute walk from my house. I went out there, walked in the fabric store, and I was like, yup, this was the solution. I was too focused on markets and a finished product because I was so used to the finished product, and it's so easy. So I didn't think of, but what is this material? And the material is simply a fabric, a mesh fabric with tiny holes, too small for most bugs to get through. So now that's all I need to do. I don't have to go to a market again and look for a ready-made bug net, which most countries will have, so maybe I'll do that. But now if there's a fabric store closer, I can just go there. So I walk into the fabric store, and I ask them if they have mesh netting, and I show them a mosquito net, and she says, oh yeah. And she immediately takes me to a wall with 8 different rollers on it, and there's like each one is 1.5 meters wide, and you just take off as much as you want. And 1.5 meters is about as much as I need, but I haven't made one or used a bug net in, a year or two, whatever it was. So I bought more than I needed. But I was looking at this material, and it was not stretchy at all, which is the only problem, because I didn't want to rip it when I was in the hammock and like pushing against it. If it's a rigid tube with no give at all, then if it's too small, I could rip through it. It's very thin material. It's a mesh, right? So I looked around and then I just asked her, translated Mongolian in the app, do you have this same mesh but elastic? She was like, oh yeah. And she took me over, and there's another 8 in another part of the store, and it's a bunch of different colors, but they're slightly, very slightly elastic. Maybe 50%, like when you stretch it, it'll stretch 50% extra, which is exactly what I want. I don't want super stretchy, because if it stretches too much, the holes will get too big, the mosquitoes can get through. But I do want slightly stretchy so that the holes are tiny enough to block bugs, but I don't have to worry about it ripping with any amount of stretching at all. Then, more good news, turns out I wanted the blue one, and the blue one specifically was half off. Now, it was already $1 for each square meter of this stuff. Very cheap. And that's 1.5 by 1 meter. But then it was half price. So I ended up getting the thing, I don't even know, whatever, a $2, something like that. So it was cheaper, because I know I said $1 and you can get $1 bug nets, but I think I usually would pay $2 and $3. So I was paying the same amount, just getting the fabric straight from this store, and it was a stronger fabric. That's the thing. Because it was actual fabric made for clothing rather than the mass-produced bug nets from Thailand, it's a much higher quality fabric. Like, it definitely feels stronger in general, and it doesn't feel like if I snag it on something, it'll immediately like bust open. But if it does, it's a bug net. You can just sew it shut like I always do, so that's fine. But so it worked fine. I got 3 by 1.5 meters of bug netting, of this fabric mesh, and I'm very happy I did that, because every country in the world, even if they don't have bug nets in the kind that I like, I would have to make it into a hammock bug net anyway. So I can just go to a fabric store now anywhere and get slightly elastic mesh, or even regular mesh, because it's going to be like $1 again. So I thought that was really funny that I also got half off when I was like, hey, do you have this? It would be better if it was elastic. They were like, yeah, we have the better one, and it's cheaper for you. Because not all of the colors were half off also. It was like 3 of the colors, but the blue one that I decided I want, there was a blue and a green one. The blue and green one were both on sale. But I went for the blue one, which is the same blue as my hammock, and boom. So a couple bucks. I took that home. I immediately sewed it up, and I fit it to my big hammock, my big new hammock. And it took me, I don't know, an hour, because I was being pretty careful, and sewing it well. And but yeah, then I have a hammock and a bug net set now. So I was pretty excited about that. But what I was more excited about is my, again, patent pending, travel hammock. Okay, folks, this is such a good idea. And it's nowhere. So I have a patent on it now. That's cool. I've come up with so many things while traveling, and I've always thought about patenting them and producing them, but I never have, and I have to start doing it because these ideas are too good. So I finally applied for a couple patents. And this idea was the straw that broke the camel's back of incredulity, where I was like, you don't need to. I just should, because this is such a good idea. Folks, I have a travel pillow that I love from Daiso. It's filled with those crappy microplastic beads. I don't like those anyway, but the fabric of the pillow is really nice, and it has a hood on it, so I like that. But guess what? I know how to use a zipper, I know how to sew, so I cut open the hammock, and I took out all those little crappy microplastic beads, put them in a trash can, cleaned it completely out, no more beads. I sewed in a zipper to like 1/3 of the back of the travel pillow, and now I have a stuff sack for my hammock. And the hammock is soft and like lightweight and, flexible, compressible. So it just looks like a regular travel pillow, but inside is a hammock and bug net. And I actually think I can fit my new rain tarp in there too. But anyway, that's amazing. And nobody was selling it yet, so I patented the idea. But how good of an idea is that? You're traveling, travel pillow, take the travel pillow with you. There's no extra weight to your rucksack. There's no extra volume to your suitcase, whatever you have. But you have a sleeping setup around your neck. What? If you like hammock camping and you're a light camper or you travel at all, I'm sure you see what a great idea this is. You unzip your travel pillow and you can pull out your entire hammock. And then you just put it right back in when you're done. Holy cow. When I thought of this, I couldn't think of anything else for like 2 days. But I didn't want to open up and like, what if it doesn't work? My travel pillow won't work anymore. But then I was like, what? This is such a good idea. If this works, like how it should work, because this is a pretty basic utility, you've solved so many problems. You can carry a sleeping setup without adding weight or volume to your luggage. Obviously, the packet jacket is in the same vein, solves the problem of having to pay for airline fees for baggage ever. And now I can do that plus with the sleeping setup. And I love hammock camping. It's more comfortable to me to sleep in a hammock than a bed. I was very excited about this. So although I was worried about screwing up my travel pillow, I took the plunge and just did it. I cut a 6-inch hole slit into the back of the travel pillow. I found this old lady selling zippers on the side of the road, and I got it, and I put it in, and it works. It works great. The only thing left is to permanently attach the travel pillow to the hammock so I don't have to put But the thing is that I can just clasp the travel pillow around my neck like a tiny shoulder cape. So I don't even know. I'll probably attach it permanently, though. All I gotta do is sew it into the lining. But I have used it already, and it's so great. I've been through airports with this travel pillow, and nobody even notices it because it's a travel pillow in an airport, of course. But that's a whole sleeping setup resting around my neck and it's lighter than most travel pillows because it's an ultralight hammock with a bug net, which is just mesh, mostly air. Oh my gosh. So I thought about this for a long time, and then I finally just made it, and it worked exactly how I wanted it to, and now I've been through several airports with it. I cannot recommend it enough. Well, you can't buy it anywhere, but I don't know, man. I just patented it, so I have to start shopping it around to sports equipment stores, because how good of an idea. I still think that's a great idea. And I'm very happy. It works. Travel pillow hammock. A hammock pillow. Of course. Of course. Of course. Also, this thing is, I've been hammock camping for over a decade, and I just thought of it. And I've been carrying it in my bag for so long, and I just realized that I didn't have to. So it blew my mind, where I was like, this is a huge amount of weight in your relatively ultralight setup that you don't have to worry about taking on planes anymore. Wowzers, bowbowsers. So there we go. Between packet jacket and the hammock travel pillow, boy, I hope I can get a good name for that. Hammock. I'll have to think of a good name like packet jacket. That just wrote itself. But I'm so happy with these two developments that just happened, both of them, like in the last year or so. Works so well. Okay, so now I have a sleeping setup I can take everywhere with me. That was my main problem, that I didn't want to use up a bunch of volume and weight in my bag, but I don't have to anymore. Oh, my bone conduction headphones that I love finally died. Oh wait, that was in Korea. Okay, so let's leave Mongolia. Okay, so I make my hammock travel pillow. I have my hammock itself, complete sleeping setup, good to go. Oh, while I was in Mongolia, walking to that guy's camping store, by the way, I came across a basketball stunt exposition, and there was an opera singer singing in Mongolian opening up the show, and that was really cool. And then I saw some people doing little basketball tricks. Just a cool thing that was randomly in a park while I was walking in Ulaanbaatar. Oh, and then in the really big park where I tested my hammock, there were a couple of bums drunkenly talking to each other, and then one of them just puked right in front of the other one. And he must have already puked a couple times because there was a lot of vomit near his feet, and it was gross. But it was just kind of surprising because I've seen people puke when they're like crazy drunk before, and that's definitely that. I'm pretty sure that's what the problem was with this guy. But this was broad daylight rather than after barbecue in China when we're all way too drunk to even think. He was just throwing up in a park a lot, all over his shoes. And his buddy was patting his back, and they were both unhoused, it looked like, which was pretty common in the city. If I haven't mentioned that before, there were a lot of homeless people in Ulaanbaatar. Like, not, I guess, I mean, if you're in the city, yeah, if you're in the city, not as much as the US for sure, but still a lot. And this guy was puking at 1 p.m. or whatever it was, 3 p.m., who knows. Okay, I'm just trying to finish up Mongolia because I think I have some more stuff before I get to Jeju. Wait, do I have that much stuff? Hang on. Dang, actually, you know what? I have a bunch more Mongolia stuff. I didn't realize that. When I was walking back with my new hammock before I made my travel pillow hammock, there was a kid who wanted to cross the street on his bicycle, and I like kind of acted as a buffer so the cars would stop because I was afraid he'd get hit because the traffic's kind of crazy in that city, and that felt good. Just acting as a buffer for this kid so he could safely go across the crosswalk with his bicycle. Okay, what was really interesting, right after I helped that kid, I was like, wait, what am I walking toward? Because I was crossing the street, and there was a pad. This must be a normal thing, and I just don't know about it. It was like a bounce pad, but it was like, I don't know, 15 meters across, like a good 50 feet across, in a circle. It was a domed rubber, rigid rubber circle, and kids were just jumping on it like a trampoline. Like 40, 50, tons of kids. There were dozens of kids on this 50-foot round diameter dome of rubber. It looked like a bounce pad from a Super Mario game or something. It was very bizarre. And there were just a bunch of kids playing on it. And they were falling down and bouncing and rolling off it. And it was weird, but it was right there. So that must be, I don't know. Is that a thing? Does anybody know if you know if that's a thing, let me know. I don't think I've seen that kind of bounce pad before. It was very strange to come across in the middle of a city. I think it was near a school or something. So I was like, I guess that's part of their playground. Oh, and I went to the national park also to test out my hammock, like fully now that I had the bug net and I could pack it in the travel pillow. And I took it down there and set it up, and it worked perfectly, which was really exciting. I had the drawstring on both sides, so I pulled the bug net tube like over the hammock after I'm in the hammock, and then cinch shut the drawstring, and boom, I have a bug tight hammock. And I fell asleep for a bit, and then when I walked home, my roommate was like, "Hey, where'd you go?" Because she's from Mongolia, the host of this Airbnb, and I told her I went to that national park to the south. And she said, "Oh, the east." I was like, "Oh, I think it's to the south." She was like, "It's down this road, right?" I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "No, that's definitely east." And I didn't just say yeah, which I guess maybe I could have, but it's a huge park, and it's directly south of where we lived. So I just showed her the map, and she was like, east. And I guess she just didn't know what east was, because it did extend to the east and west after you went south, but to get to the park, you just go straight south. So after I showed her the picture of it directly south from her apartment and she said east again, I was like, yes, east, and then just let it go, because who cares? So I'm very happy I have my mosquito net and my hammock, and it's all set up and I'm ready to go, but I still have a few days to wait before I can go to Jeju, South Korea. So I just walked around the city. I think, like within that last week, that's when I got the hammock and I was looking for the mosquito net and all that stuff. But all that was done, and I found something I was extremely happy to find, kushur. Now, kushur is very common in Ulaanbaatar. It's like the de facto Mongolian dumpling. But it didn't sound great to me. I had one before, it was whatever. But then I was walking past a store and there was a guy smoking outside of it, and I don't usually like that. But for some reason, my brain was like, yo, that one's good. So I turned around and I walked in. The guy smoking the cigarette held the door open for me. And then he threw down a cigarette and came in after me, and I realized he was the proprietor, and he was selling kushur. And he had a kimchi yak kushur and a yak and cheese kushur. So little like pierogi slash dumpling things. So inside this pastry dough is, meat and kimchi or meat and cheese. And I got one of each, and it was the best thing I ate in Mongolia. And I was so glad to get it because I didn't eat a ton of Mongolian cuisine. It didn't stick out to me as super amazing, unique. Nothing was like, oh, I haven't had something like that before, except for that yak barbecue that rocked, and now this kushur that rocked. It didn't taste like pierogies. It was a much softer bread. It didn't taste like baozi. It was a much thinner bread. It was the perfect bread. It was delicious, and inside there was a bunch of meat and a bunch of kimchi. The cheese one was okay, but I'm not as big on cheese as I am on something like kimchi. So the last 5 days, I went back every day before I left South Korea, every day, and that's what I ate. I ate kushur every day. And this was the only shop I saw the entire time I was in Ulaanbaatar that had glass Coca-Cola bottles also in a little fridge, like in the restaurant, in this tiny restaurant also. And it's always the quality places that have other quality stuff. Coca-Cola tastes much better from a glass bottle than a metal can to me. I feel like I taste the metal pretty strong in Coca-Cola cans versus Coca-Cola glass bottles. So every day I went and got 2 or 3 kimchi yak kushur from this guy and one little glass Coca-Cola bottle, and it was a fun snack every day. And the 3rd day or the 4th day or something, I asked if I could drink beer in his shop, and he was like, yeah, of course. And I can't remember why, but I picked up a couple cans of beer, and I had that with the kushur. But it wasn't even as satisfying as the little Coca-Cola bottle. That tasted better. I mean, I drank the beer. I'm not going to throw it away. But that was great. That was a cool little shop, and if I would have gone there the whole time I was there if I found out about it sooner. I just didn't realize how good kushur was, and I hadn't seen any that sounded appetizing to me. But when I went to this guy's shop, I was like, you know what? This guy probably has the good stuff. And boy, howdy did he. And the rest of the week, I also ate a bunch of Korean fried chicken, which is super funny because I was going to go to Jeju, South Korea in like 5 days. But for some reason, I ate Korean fried chicken at this one restaurant in Mongolia, and I was like, "Ooh, that is good," because they have so many Korean restaurants in Ulaanbaatar. So I just tried all these different restaurants, and I found some pretty good Korean fried chicken. Also, during this last week, when I was walking home, I came across this blocked off street, and it was just huge, and there was a crowd of people walking around, almost like a fair, and there were like little stalls around, and there was a giant bouncy castle on the sidewalk. It was just on the sidewalk in a driveway. It was huge. It was like normal giant bouncy castle sized. And I walked, and the next block had one also, and I didn't know what the heck was going on. I was walking around trying to figure it out, but very, very few people speak any English, so I didn't try to ask anybody. Oh, and there's no resources to learn Mongolian, so I could say a few of the foods, and that's pretty much it. So I couldn't speak to anybody. But then I saw this group of people jogging through with numbers on them and realized I had heard about the Ulaanbaatar half marathon going on sometime in the future, a couple weeks back, and here it was. I happened to cross the Ulaanbaatar marathon route. So that's what it was. There's a big like half celebration, half marathon day going on. And that was cool just to walk around. Went to a new supermarket, looked at people walking around, the fashionable Mongolians. I must have mentioned that already, right? They're the most fashionable Asians, the most handsome and pretty Asians. They're angular, but they're broad and taller, and they just look cool. They all wear like leather jackets and bespoke clothing and boots. Mongolian, at least in Ulaanbaatar, I liked their fashion the most, I think, out of other Asian fashions. Like Chinese people just wear pants and a t-shirt. The girls will dress in nice sundresses, but the fashion's not crazy. The fashion in Korea obviously it's pretty wild, but the boys wear very flowy things like the girls, and they also use a lot of makeup. And yeah, fashion in Korea is just generally very soft and softening and flowy and fun. Mongolia's fashion is Hell's Angels, bespoke Hell's Angels. It's like leather stuff and boots that fit them perfectly. And they, like I said, they have more angular cheekbones, Mongolians in general, than other Asians. So I just thought they all looked so cool. So it was fun walking around in this crowd of a bunch of cool, fashionable people. Me walking around like a filthy travel hobo. Oh, you know what's crazy? I love Tutti Frutti Jelly Belly jelly beans. The Tutti Frutti flavor specifically. I'm fine with jelly beans. They're fine, but I don't really care. But the Tutti Frutti ones, they're good enough that I'll get them if I see just a pack of Tutti Frutti. And I haven't seen just that pack in years. I mean, I've been traveling. There's not a lot of jelly beans in like China, whatever, Japan. But I was in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, going to a supermarket, I think to get nori or something. And I'd been there. It's pretty close, so I'd walk. It's one of the grocery stores I normally walked to. So this was new, and there was a new display of Jelly Belly jelly bean bags by flavor, and they had the Tutti Frutti flavor. And I was like, that's crazy. And people don't really like it because it tastes like toothpaste, I think. And I like that. Tastes great. So I was kind of dumbstruck again. I was like, how are these in Mongolia? Like the grocery stores in Mongolia carry Mongolian and Korean things. And now there's like a Jelly Belly display case. And not just like bags of random jelly beans, but like by flavor. They sell each flavor, which is a very boutique thing. And here it is in the tundra in Mongolia. It was, yeah, bizarre to see, but I got a bag of Tutti Frutti, and then I got another one a couple days later, and I was very happy to have them, and they were delicious. Oh, and then I bought it, and I was talking to the cute checkout girl, and we had like a nice, whatever, little conversation. And then I was so happy. I was like, talk to a cute girl. That's cool. I realized I didn't even get the jelly beans, and I hadn't realized it, but she was calling after me, and I was like, yes, my sweet. And then she came running up with the jelly beans, which was like the only thing I forgot. I put everything else in my bag and forgot those. And she very kindly ran out the store to give them back to me. Thanks, lady. Oh, what else did I get in there that I didn't forget? I got fermented mare's milk. Milk from a mare, a female horse, that has been fermented, which is a very common drink in Mongolia, traditionally and culturally. And now they sell them in cans that you can buy like beer in the store. And there's a little bit of alcohol in there, not a ton. It's kind of, I've been describing it as like milk kombucha to people. That's what it reminded me of the most. It's fermented. It's a little bit bubbly, just a little bit. And it's very thin. It's not like you're drinking thick, fatty milk. It's very thin milk that's been fermented. It's very interesting. And it doesn't taste bad. Of all the weird stuff I've had in different countries, this was like this is our traditional drink. It's not good, but I would buy mare's milk again. I got it the last day I was there. I think, yeah, right before. Yeah, it was the last day. So I didn't drink all of it because I was worried it tastes good and I feel fine, but what if I get sick? I don't want to be sick on a plane to South Korea. But I didn't get sick, and it just tasted good and weird like kombucha does. Except this one tasted faintly of milk. And it wasn't thick and heavy like the fatty milk, like the fat in milk makes milk taste. It was very light. It was interesting. I would definitely like to drink more, and I'd like to drink it with different foods and see what it pairs with, because I feel like it would pair with something well, and I don't know what it is yet exactly. Except knowing Mongolia, I'm sure they'd just be like, just eat a bunch of meat with it. I love how direct Mongolians are. That was such a fun country. So that was such a fun country because it was so unique and so interesting and deep. There was so much going on. And that was just in the city, which is not even particularly Mongolian in itself. It's so taken over by other Asian stores and other cultures. I had a wonderful time in Mongolia. What else did I get up to after that? Oh my gosh, you know what? After I got the fermented mare's milk, I also went to the store and I got 2 things of Mongolian vodka because I hadn't had them yet. Or I hadn't had any Mongolian vodka yet, but I heard about it. It's like all the drunks drink it there and it's very popular. You know, it's right next to Russia. I assume that's has some influence on it. But there were 2 types, and nobody could explain to me how they were different, so I just got both bottles. One girl was like, no, they're definitely the exact same. Those are both vodka. They're just in different bottles and different colors, but they're the same thing. They're not. They tasted completely different. The blue bottle was good. The gray bottle was almost as bad as Baijio. It definitely was not as bad as Baijio, but it was pretty bad. I think it was like from wheat or something. I don't know. It sucked. But the regular Mongolian vodka, yeah, it was tasty vodka for not, I mean, it was cheap, I guess. It was like $5 for a tiny bottle, maybe 350 milliliters. For that price, I mean, yeah, it was fine. I just drank a sip from each and then left them on the table for my host, my Airbnb host, to finish up because her boyfriend definitely drinks plenty. So I figured he at least would appreciate a couple free bottles of vodka. And I wouldn't like it. Just if I'm going to drink, give me some seltzers or really good microbrew. And then you know what I did? I changed my reservation from 1 week in Korea. I was going to be there for a week from in Jeju Island to 1 day, 3 days? I think 3 days. I think I changed to 3 days because I knew the first day I'd just be exhausted and pass out. And then after that 3 days, I was like, you can live in a hotel for 3 days and then backpack for 4 days. You'll still save money because hammock camping is free and you love to be in a hammock. And I really was looking forward to that. So I canceled it and I was like, there, now you don't have the rest of the week. You have to go and hammock camp, which it is daunting if you haven't done it in a while, or especially the first time you ever do it. You're like, is this okay? Yes, it's fine. But I hadn't done it, and it's so easy and lazy to just rent a room somewhere. So I'm used to doing that, and I hadn't been hammocking, but I did it, and I was like, here you go. Now you have to sleep outside. And I knew as soon as I did sleep outside, I was going to love it because I love sleeping in hammocks. But I just had to take the leap and make sure I didn't have a room reserved. Okay, I cleaned up my Airbnb. I'm mentioning this because I don't usually clean it up this nice. I clean it up, I think, nicer than other guests. I try not to leave any trash in the room. If they have a vacuum, I'll vacuum the carpet because I eat in my room. I also tend to fix things when I get to Airbnbs. If your shower is clogged and I'm your guest, it's going to be unclogged by the time I leave. If there's like a loose screw or a table is wobbly, it's going to be fixed and tight like later after I'm out of there. But this lady, oh boy, she was just quite particular about things. The faceplates for her light switches were not attached to the wall, but if you like twisted them so they dug into the wall, then they would stay in there for a little while anyway. And she was insistent that I twist them into the wall so they would stay there. Look, I liked this apartment, and the lady was fine, if a bit particular about certain things. So I've never gotten a bad review on Airbnb recently, knock on wood, and I don't want that to happen. So I just cleaned up more than I usually did. And the kitchen one, you can't put that light switch faceplate in there. It's just not, it doesn't fit in there. but I left it very nice. Oh, and then luckily I tried that vodka and I didn't want it, so I just left that for them, and I was like, good. And I got a nice little review from her. But okay, I'm going to explain this briefly. She sent me messages on Airbnb saying, hey, please make sure to keep my apartment clean and not have hair in the shower. And I was like, yeah, of course. But then when I went to shower, her long black hair, clearly not my hair, was in the shower. So she would ask me to do things like be careful about keeping her apartment clean for a few things like that, and then I'd find out that she was doing those things. And people don't notice how they live much of the time. They don't notice their own habits. They only notice the habits of others. It's a lot easier to criticize outside of yourself than to be aware and examine yourself. So I just had that kind of things in mind when I cleaned the entire house before I moved out. And that's very rare on Airbnb for an Airbnb person, especially one with experience with so many guests, to make a big deal out of something like hair in the shower if that does come up. Or like where you place the tissue box or something like that. But given that she was very particular about those things, and I enjoyed the apartment a lot, I cleaned it up very, very nice before I left, and I left her some carabiners and travel equipment stuff that she said she liked that I didn't need. I got extra carabiners with my new hammock, and I was like, not going to use these. And some fabric because she saw I sew pockets onto the sides of the backpacks I have so I can fit like beers and sodas inside the backpack without using up the volume of the backpack itself. She thought that was cool. I left her some good fabric for that so she could sew her own pockets. That's what she wanted to do. And then the next day, I was out of there, and I was on my way to Jeju Island, South Korea. I had so much fun in Busan. I was very excited to go explore Jeju and see how different the island was. Islands of any country are always so different than the mainland. And this was the main island of South Korea, or the main like tourist island that all the Chinese and Russians go to. So I was excited to check it out because I friggin' loved Busan right before I was in Busan, like, I don't know, 2 months ago maybe, and I had a great time there. So now I was like, yeah, man, get me South Korea again. Oh, you know what's so weird? Okay, I should just mention this first because I had my first encounter with a belligerent air passenger that I've ever had. In 15 years, hundreds of flights, I don't know how many, I finally met a real jerk. And it was very surprising. Yeah, this is just the airplane ride over there. So I'll talk about Korea itself in the next episode, but let's finish up this episode with the airplane ride to Jeju. I actually didn't have to use my packet jacket out of Mongolia. For some reason, all carry-ons were accepted this flight. That was nice. So I put it up there. I was like, well, that's good. That's some good luck. And then I sat down, and there was this loud shouting from the back of the plane, and a bunch of people looked behind. But I've been in 100 planes, and I was like, who cares? I don't care. And I just didn't even turn around. And then I heard like stomping, and the shouting guy who had been stomping, I did hear, at first I didn't, but he kept shouting, and he was saying like, I'm going here, let me go. And then he stomped over and sat in the seat in front of me. And I was like, darn it. Because I don't want to sit next to someone who's going to shout at a air stewardess or an air hostess to get around them. Like, you can't wait 1 minute or politely say it. He can't. He was shouting. And I was like, oh boy. And because he was shouting, and because we were in Asia, I was like, probably Chinese. Turns out that hypothesis was correct. That's the end of that story. He was Chinese. That's the end of figuring out who he was, of stereotyping someone based on them shouting. Yes. Because he turned to who I assumed was his girlfriend and spoke in Chinese to her. And I was like, yep, that makes sense. So I was like, that was rude that he was yelling at the air hostess when he just needed to get like a few, you can just quietly turn. He wasn't a huge guy. He was a normally sized person. He could have just turned sideways and gone past her and got to his seat. We weren't taking off or anything. We're still waiting to even get onto the taxi onto the runway. So we had plenty of time. But he was shouting to get to his seat to the point that it was disrupting passengers. And that was weird, but I was like, whatever. And I put in my earplugs and put down my mask, and then they asked me, please listen to the safety thing. And I put on my mask, and then the belligerent man in front of me, thrust the chair back. So he was leaning back in the chair, but he just like pushed it back as hard as possible and like bounced toward me. And I was like, whoa. And the stewardess came by and she was like, sir, we're about to move. We're about to take off. So put your chair up. And he was like, the chair goes back, in English, even though he's Chinese. It was, yeah, I think Chinese tourists know that more people will understand them in English than China. He was like, but it goes back. She's like, yes, but to take off, you have to put your chair up. You can't have it back. He's like, and he puts it up. And I was like, oh, God, I have to sit behind this guy. And she walks away. And as soon as she walks away, he bends his chair back again, like pretty violently, and pushes it so it's like right in my face. And I tap the side of the chair, and he turns around. He's like, what? I was like, you have to put the chair up. We're about to take off. And he said, no, I don't. I don't have to put the chair up. It goes back. It's fine. I was like, no, you have to put the chair up while we're taking off. It's going to shake. It's very close to me. And he goes, we're not flying yet. We're not flying yet, are we? I don't have to. I don't have to do that because you say I do. And I was like, the air hostess just told you. This is every single plane you're going to be on. You have to put your tables up and put your chairs to the right position so that they can take off safely. So he's like, I'm not doing it. I was like, okay, I'll just call the people then. And I pushed the button. And then he was like, fuck. I was like, did that dude just swear? And he put his seat back up to the normal position. And I was like, okay. And I turned off the light so that she didn't come over. And then he pushed his chair back, like the chair back again, multiple times toward me. Like he was like that Tim Robinson sketch where he's pretending to throw water on the guy, except this was a full chair and he was like violently throwing it back. So he was doing that. I was like, is this man a child? He was like 50 or 60, but he was obviously acting like a baby. And it was so bizarre. I was confused. And I looked over and the other people on the plane were like looking at him. And I noticed one guy to my right row, like staring at him intently. And I was like, this is crazy. And so when he put it forward again before he was going to push it back, I just put my hand out and stopped it from like coming back toward me again. And he felt that and he whips around, looks over his chair at me and says, what? Are things fine? Are you fine? I was like, yeah, I'm fine. Stop pushing your chair back. You can put it back after we take off. And then he yelled, fuck you. Do you want to fight? Again, in shock, basically. There's let's say 55. There's a 55-year-old man with a crazy shock of half curly black hair turning around in his seat while we're taxiing onto the runway, getting ready to take off, not wanting to put his seat up after the air stewardess made him, turning around in his seat, swearing at me in a plane and asking if I want to fight. And he put up his fists. He put up his fists like fisticuffs, like fighting. Like he had never fought in his life before, but he had his fists up around the chair with his fat head. It was so bizarre. And I told him, yes, please fight me on a plane. And his face was like, what? And he got kind of confused. And he said, fuck you. And then turned back to face forward. And the whole plane is just like, what is this guy doing? And the guy who had been staring at him intently looked over at me and mouthed, hey, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. He's just meh. And crazy man didn't talk to me much. He did like glare at me a couple times when he got up out of his seat to go to the bathroom. It was only a 2-hour flight, so I just read books. And I just looked back at him because I was like, you should hit me because then you're going to be arrested. And that would be the funniest thing ever. So whenever he glared at me when he was getting up from his seat, I just calmly stared back at him with engaging eye contact. But he was well enough versed in self-preservation that he didn't physically touch me. And before we took off, when he said like, fuck you, and then turned, want to fight? I was like, should I ask should I report this? This is crazy behavior from an air passenger. It never happens. If you don't travel a lot, just so you know, that is a 1 in a million thing. That's crazy. I've never seen it in real life on a plane. That's the craziest person I've ever seen on a plane in hundreds of flights. I see way more people crazier in cars all the time. Road rage is a very real thing. Plane rage is not really a thing, but this guy had it. But honestly, I was kind of in shock, so I didn't report it to the airline at the time that it happened. But I didn't report it because I wasn't physically intimidated by the guy, and I've dealt with crazy people forever. So it wasn't too much of a problem for me because I wasn't worried, but I realized later everyone in the plane seemed pretty worried. And I should have reported the air stewardess, if for no other reason than the air host or hostess could tell the guy like, hey, you can't act like that on an airplane. I told him that, but it would make more sense coming from someone with a uniform on. So that was pretty crazy. We land in Jeju 2 hours later. He just has some mugging going on with me. And then when he stands up to get his backpack or his suitcase for him and his girlfriend, I realize he has a kid with him, so that must be his wife, and that is their child. And that's how this guy acts around his family. It was it got even stranger. And the whole time for like a minute when he's taking down his luggage, he doesn't look at me. And then finally he stares at me and like pushes his head forward. And I just look up at him and he starts talking to me again, and he just starts trying to start crap. And the guy who had been staring at him intently in the beginning leaned over and he was typing something into his phone and then leaned over, and in Chinese, his phone spoke and it said, Xin Zaianjing he, blah, blah. And it was the effect of, sit down, be quiet, or I'm going to call the police on you right now. Or arrest, maybe. I don't know if that guy was like the air marshal on the flight or what exactly was going on. But that guy was, just fed up. And I felt really bad because he seemed like a nice guy. And on the way out, we were walking out, and he was like, sorry about that guy. Welcome to Korea. And I think he was Korean, and it was just a bummer because you have to, man, people, just be kind. Why cause trouble for everybody else? So when I got to Korea and got to my hotel room, I had been thinking in the back burner about this guy, and I was like, you know what? I have to report that. And so I called up the airlines, and I wrote to the airlines also and made a report about that guy. And this is just for anyone else who encounters a situation like that. If you're so shocked you don't know what to do like I was, call the air hostess over and let them know something is happening. Because, again, I wasn't personally worried, but as I thought about it, everybody else on that plane was very worried, and that guy doesn't know how to act on an airplane, so I should have reported it at the time. And now I will know going forward that I should report something like that immediately, but because it was directed at me and I was fine, I just didn't. So I should have been considering others more. And obviously that guy should have been considering others more. Especially considering his tiny, 8-year-old daughter that he is swearing and threatening to fight people in front of. But guess what? That guy totally sucked. My stay in Jeju was awesome. It was a great time. I will talk about that in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'm going to go out for a while. I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you soon. Oh, as always, you can hit me up at bitofarambler@gmail.com or bitofarambler on Blue Sky on Lemmy. Talk to me if you want to talk. Have a great day if you don't.